according to research at Harvard Medical School, fresh flowers in your home has such a positive impact on your mood, on your mental well-being. Let me tell you about this research. Dr. Nancy Etkoff of Mass General Hospital here in Boston, she's at Harvard Medical School, did a study that proves that living with cut flowers in your apartment, in your home, strengthens feelings of compassion. Cut flowers decrease anxiety and worry. I know that if you're not a flower person like me, you're probably like, what? Flowers? Anxiety? Come on, Mel. It's kind of easy to be skeptical, right? And so you may be thinking, well, okay, how exactly did Dr. Etkoff and her team at Harvard measure how flowers make you feel? I dug into the research for you, and here's what I found. They had people in this study live with fresh cut flowers in their homes for less than a week. And then they measured them before and after. And the study showed that people who had fresh cut flowers in their house felt an increase in feelings of compassion and kindness for others. Why? Well, I want you to stop and think about a moment when you really did stop and smell the roses. Maybe you're listening to me right now as you're on a walk, or you're sitting at a stoplight in your car. Look around. Is there something blooming? Just think about how insane it is. Like, for real. How the heck did this living work of art unfold in front of my eyes from the dirt? That you take a tulip and it starts with this like dried up brown bulb, and you stick it in the soil and it just bursts through the soil and it shoots up this green stem, and then this beautiful flower forms. It's so beautiful. And you also know that it's fragile, that if you touch the petals too hard, you'd rip it off. Just staring at a beautiful bloom, it activates this sense of the beauty and the fragility of life within you. And I think that's what activates kindness and compassion as you look at it. And you just go, isn't that beautiful? And you feel yourself soften. That's what the researchers are talking about. You know, it's also why instinctively you send flowers to somebody when they lose a loved one, don't you? Or you send flowers to someone on their birthday. Or when you want to express this love that you have for someone who's in your life. You send flowers because they stand for something. Flowers represent joy. They represent beauty. They represent awe. They represent the fragility of life. So does it really surprise you that in this study from Harvard, that people in the study said they felt less negative after being around flowers in their house for just a few days? It doesn't surprise me at all when I really stop and think about it. Of course it would have that impact on you. In fact, that's not all the research found. The researchers at Harvard found that the blooms brought people so much joy that they started reporting in the study that they were looking forward to seeing the blooms first thing in the morning. And I'm going to ask you to stop and think about that finding for just a moment too. You know, when somebody sends you flowers, right? Or you take the time to cut flowers. You buy a beautiful bouquet for yourself at the farmer's market and you bring them home. And then you put them in a vase and you put them somewhere. You typically what? Put them in the dining room table, or you put them in the middle of the island of the kitchen, or you put them on your desk or next to your the dresser, you know, next to your bed so you can see them. Isn't it true that when you have beautiful flowers in your kitchen, that simply walking into the kitchen and seeing them on the table or on the counter or on your desk, it just kind of makes you feel better? In fact, this morning I was out with the dogs. So, you know, the dogs always wake me up, and then I let them out and I was walking around the yard and I cut a bunch of lilacs off the bush. And when I got into the house, I'm like arranging the lilacs into this glass vase and I put them in the kitchen and I stand back and I smile at them. And it's like having a friend greet you. In fact, before I jumped on the mic, I walked back down to the kitchen to fill my water up. There they were. And bonus with lilacs, because you can smell them. And so you have this amazing bonus. You see them, they're beautiful, like a work of art. They're there like a friend greeting you. They smell great. And look, it takes a lot to get me out of bed. I'm not the kind of person who will get out of bed for donuts or for, bacon being cooked in the kitchen. Even some days, my 2 dogs, Homie and YOLO, they'll be sitting there like, come on, Mom. And I'm not rolling out of bed. But I will roll out of bed to see the dahlias that I cut blooming in the kitchen, because that is a beautiful, beautiful sight. And this plays right into the research, because in this study at Harvard, it was proven that flowers also provide a boost of energy. And you've kind of felt it, haven't you? But I bet you didn't notice it. See, I believe that energy that the researchers are talking about comes from that tiny feeling of awe. That when you really look at a flower and you marvel at it for a second, there's this just feeling of being awestruck. And that's where this energy comes from. It's like a life force energy. It's almost like sunshine in a vase. They make you smile and feel better. And now you know why. Because the research says it's true. And you want to know something that's also cool? There's even more science about flowers. There was another study done by researchers at Rutgers University that was all about what happens when you give flowers as a gift. Wait till you hear this. This is mind-blowing. When you give flowers as a gift, it activates something inside you that makes you feel more emotionally connected to the person that you're giving flowers to. How cool is that? And let's go back to that research from Harvard, because I think I know why the gift of flowers makes you feel more connected to the person that you're giving flowers to. Flowers are almost like a surrogate for you. Flowers are just like a representation of your love. The flowers are a reminder to the person that you send them to smile. They're a thing of beauty. And because they're alive, it's like sending them life force in a vase. And then you get to put something on the card. And when you write something on the card, guess what? The flowers even take on a bigger meaning, because the flowers represent the full sentiment of what you just wrote on the card. I love you. I miss you. Get better. I believe in you. Congratulations. Can you tell in my voice I'm just smiling, even talking about flowers? And I bet you are too. You want to know why? Because right now, as I'm talking about flowers and the beauty of flowers and the awe-struck feeling of really taking in a beautiful bloom, and I'm talking about how it makes you feel more connected to people and the moments in life where you send them to people, I guarantee you're thinking of someone. You're either thinking of someone who sent you flowers recently, or you're thinking of someone who you're like, oh, I should really send them some flowers. I love that person. And yeah, you should. In fact, I got a story to tell you. Just last week, I had a really hard week at work. We are growing at hyperspeed. There's a lot of changes going on. I'm working on my next book. Oakley is graduating. So I am just feeling burnt out and tired. And I've been up here in Vermont, just cranking away. And earlier this week, a friend of mine, Dr. Judith Joseph, who is this extraordinary MD, PhD researcher who has been on the Mel Robbins podcast. She is unbelievable. She sent me the most just insane arrangement of flowers. I am talking jaw on the floor. 2 delivery people have to carry it in. It was the size of, when you know those exercise balls at a gym? They're usually that sort of bluish color, and you see people kind of sit on them and do sit-ups on them. They're probably 3 feet in diameter. You know what I'm talking about, right? This arrangement that Dr. Judith sent to me was that big. And I remember, this must have been a decade ago, I once saw Oprah Winfrey post a flower arrangement that either somebody had sent her or she had sent to somebody else. And it was an arrangement of either like bright red peonies or like 400 roses. And it was this massive mound of flowers. And I thought at the time, I have never seen an arrangement like that. That is the most extraordinary thing. I will never receive anything that extraordinary because I will never do anything that incredible that would be like literally, I remember seeing that over a decade ago. And the arrangement that Dr. Judith Joseph sent was an arrangement on that scale. And it was all my favorite colors. Like it was all the jewel tones. It was like coral peonies and pink roses and oranges and apricots and just you know what I'm talking about. It was like a jewel box 3-foot globe of the most incredible flowers. And it went to our studios in Boston. I wasn't in our studios in Boston last week. I was 3.5 hours away in Vermont. And you want to know what? I literally felt sad that I missed them. Like it goes to show you that flowers represent the person who sent them. It's as if one of my most favorite people stopped by the office while they were in town and I wasn't there to see them. And so my heart sank and I'm not going to be able to enjoy it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm seeing the pictures and I want to see them. And so you know what I did? I gave them to a person on our team, Charlotte, who has been burning the midnight oil. She has been killing it. And I just said, you know what, Charlotte? I think you should take these home. You're going to need 4 of your colleagues to help you get them to your apartment, but you should take these home and you should enjoy them all weekend. And you know what she did? She got them home and she kept sending me photos of the flowers all weekend and just talking about how much joy they gave her. And in every photo, you could see that the flowers were opening a little bit more and this arrangement was like a living thing. And this is what the researchers are talking about. This connection. The flowers that Dr. Judith Joseph gave to me connects me to Dr. Judith. And then I shared them with Charlotte, somebody that I love and somebody that I wanted to do something awesome for. And that connects me to Charlotte. And the story doesn't end there because, you know, that was kind of midweek. And so I walk into my house here in Vermont on Friday and we had been working all day and I've got this little cabinet that was my great-grandmother's that sits in the entry of our house. And it's got this marble top. It's this antique cabinet that was, you know, in her house in Buffalo, New York. Normally, you know what's on top of that? Dog leashes and dog treats. Although we don't have the dog treats there anymore because YOLO has figured out he can jump up and eat the dog treats on the thing. I know, naughty. Normally, it's like dog leashes and people's keys. Sitting there on Friday at the end of a work week, there was an arrangement just like the one that Dr. Judith had sent to me at the studios in Boston. I nearly fell over. And I pulled the card out and I'm like, who the hell sent? It was from my sister-in-law, Christine, who's also my business partner. She's the chief operating officer and she knows just how much I've been working. I burst into tears. I burst into tears. The thing was so freaking heavy, I couldn't even carry it into the kitchen. I had to get Chris to help me. And she must have sent a photo of the arrangement that went to the studio in Boston to a florist here in Vermont and was like, just do this. Because that's exactly what showed up. And I burst into tears because I just felt so connected to her. I felt so seen. Like it would have been the same thing if she had hopped on a plane and flown here from Chicago and been standing in the entry waiting to give me a hug. And they've been sitting in the island in our kitchen for 10 days. And every time I walk into the kitchen, it's as if Christine is sitting in the middle of the island waiting to give me a hug. The research is right. They make me feel better. And the flowers make me feel connected to Dr. Judith and to Charlotte and to Christine. And I know you've felt this, haven't you? And I want you to know that when you send a beautiful arrangement to someone else, especially if it's out of the blue, they feel it too. They feel your love. They feel seen. And every time they see those flowers, they think of you. And by the way, this works for everybody. Flowers is not something limited to a gender, because flowers are about love and beauty and life and connection and magic and awe. That's why they're so powerful. And when you give yourself flowers, guess what? You honor your beauty. They are an act of love to you. And when you send them to someone else, you honor them. And get this is great. Like I've only scratched the surface on the research here. The research also reveals something crazy cool about giving somebody flowers. You ready? Flowers is a gift in comparison to anything else that you could give to somebody, okay? You know what flowers reveal? They reveal that you're likely to be viewed as successful, caring, and emotionally intelligent by the person who you send them to. Because people who receive the gift of flowers in a research study responds with what science call a true smile, not a fake smile. You've gotten a present where you're like, oh, thanks, yeah, thanks for the bottle of wine I don't drink. Yeah, oh, thanks, yeah, this framed picture that I think is hideous that I'm never going to put in my house. Yeah, thank you for that. A true smile is what people have. You can't help it. And here's more on the research. People who receive flowers as a gift, based on studies, report positive moods that last for days. Here's what the study found. The study found that, quote, the presence of flowers also led to increased contact with family and friends. And so I want you to really think about this, right? Because that could be a detail that you're like, man, okay, whatever. Think about the last person who sent you flowers. Just think about that. What did you do? Well, you either called them, right? Or you sent them a text with a photo of the flowers. Why? Because the second you received them, it made you feel connected to them, which made you reach out, which then increased your connection with that family or that friend. Now, see, what I love about the research and this topic, right, is that you kind of know this. I mean, that's why we send flowers, right? Because you kind of know this. You know it's a good thing to send flowers because you're thinking of this person, and you know it feels really good to receive flowers, and so you kind of know this. But what you didn't know is that simply putting one little flower in a little glass next to your computer while you work, it somehow makes you feel better. But now you know the research. You don't have an excuse anymore to not do it. Anytime you want to do something uplifting for yourself, get yourself flowers. Anytime that you want to do something uplifting for someone else, get them flowers, because Harvard and Rutgers are now telling you, they have spent time, they have researched this, they have studies that has a proven and lasting impact. And here's how I want you to apply all this research to your daily life. I'm going to boil this down to you, okay? You ready? Number one, always have fresh flowers in your house or on your desk or next to your bed, somewhere where you can see them. Why? Well, you know the research, okay? You know that it makes you happier. You know that it boosts your mood. You know that it gives you something to look forward to. And check this out. It makes you feel more connected to the person who gave them to you. When you give yourself flowers, you feel more connected to yourself. If you want to have a better relationship with yourself, if you want to be kinder to yourself, if you want to feel like you're worthy, buy yourself flowers. Pick a flower from your garden. Stick it where you will see it. Because that little flower in the vase that you gave to you is evidence that you matter. It's evidence that you're kind to yourself. It's evidence that you're connected to yourself. It's evidence that you believe that you deserve things of beauty. You believe that you deserve to feel good. And I know it sounds silly. I'm asking you to do it. And I'm daring you to do it. And then I dare you to tell me it didn't make you feel a little better. because it's not silly. Treating yourself with kindness, making yourself feel like you're worthy, doing small things that prove to you that you want to take better care of yourself, that's not silly at all. That's how you live a better life. That's how you feel better about yourself, by proving it. And here, I'm going to give you my tip. You're going to love this, okay? Because you can go to a florist and they could be very expensive, and you might not be near a farmer's market, or you don't have a garden, or you don't have a balcony or a deck where you can grow some flowers in a pot. No problem. Here is the best tip I can give you. When you go to the grocery store, I don't care where you live in the world, they always have a little flower area, right? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to skip all the mixed bouquets that they've made up. They're too expensive. They charge more for those. And I want you to head straight for the little buckets where there's a single group of a singular type of flowers. You know, there's the bucket with tulips. There's a bucket with lilies. There's a bucket maybe with peonies. There's a bucket with flowers that are in season no matter what time of year it is, whose names I don't know, that last forever in a vase. You get what I'm talking about. You want to buy the single bouquet of the single type of flower. Here's why. Number one, they're cheaper, okay? They're cheaper than a mixed bouquet. Number two, when you take them home and you cut the ends off so that they can suck up the water and they look like a lot kind of crisper and cleaner, you can then separate them. Because in every bunch, there's usually somewhere between 5 to 12 stems of flowers in there. You can separate them and you can put them all over the house in just like little jars. And then you got fresh cut flowers everywhere for the cost of one bouquet that might have only been $5. And because you're getting it at a grocery store, you can do this year round. Your grocery store always has flowers. Got it? Good. So do it for yourself. Now, here's a second way that you can leverage this research. Today, when you're out and about and you're taking your walk, or you're running to the farmer's market, or you're heading to the grocery store, or you pass a flowering tree, or you walk by your neighbor's garden, stop. Stop. Even just stop. You know how a lot of restaurants have taken the time to plant planters with just beautiful flowers, whether it's in the entrance to the restaurant, or maybe they have flowers out on the back patio? Stop. Take 1 minute. And just marvel at how freaking unbelievable and complicated and insanely gorgeous a single flower bloom is. And if you follow me on social media, particularly Instagram, you've probably noticed I'm always posting flower photos because I am always just in awe of how extraordinary they are. In fact, every Friday night on Instagram, I tend to do a roundup of the week of photos, and there's almost always a flower blooming. And almost every day on the stories on Instagram, you'll see a close-up of some kind of flower that I've grown or some sort of flower that I've seen in my travels, because it's almost like a form of meditation. If you stop and smell the roses, right? Or stop and just look at the intricate detail of the flower in front of you, you have to be in the moment. You can't be thinking about your work deadline and just admiring all the little speckles that are on the inside of the petal of that lily. You can't. You can't be worried about the past if you are admiring the hundreds of petals on a peony that is opening up in front of you. You can't be up in your head beating the hell out of yourself, telling yourself you're not good enough if you are looking at a daffodil and just taking in the fact that it's bright yellow on the end of one petal, and as it gets toward the center of the flower, it gets a little bit lighter, but then the center part has orange, and holy cow, I've never noticed the red. You're in the moment. I always have a flower cut and sitting in a little jar right by my sink. I always do this. Why? Because as I'm washing the dishes, which I do, it seems 100 times a day. Do you feel like that? You're always at the freaking sink washing dishes? You see the flower, And all of a sudden you stop thinking about the future or the past. You stop griping about the dishes you need to do. And I just stare at the flower and I take it in. And it is a form of moving meditation. It cues me to be in the moment. In fact, right now, I know you're listening to me, but if you're on YouTube, you can see behind me, I've got all these flowers that I have grown. I cannot believe I grew those flowers. There's these huge red tulips, and there's these beautiful, what's called variegated lilacs. It's the sensation lilac variety. It's purple with these white lines around the outside of the petal. And then there's this vase to my left of these pink tulips. And they're this beautiful kind of apricot-y pink. And if you really, really stare at the tulip, it's got this white stripe that goes up on the inside. And then you look on the inside and the little things that the bees, I love flowers, but I don't even know the technical names. I probably wouldn't be able to pronounce them anyway. It doesn't matter. I still admire it. Like, when the bees go in and then they get drunk on the pollen and there's those yellow things that are standing up in there that, like, holy cow, it's just incredible. And it's all around you. And admiring it outside at restaurants and in the park and on the sidewalk and passing your neighbors. It's free. It's free. And now you know the research that simply taking in the beauty of a single bloom helps you tap into the sense of awe. It lifts your mood. It boosts your energy. It will make you smile. And here's the third thing you can do. You're going to put flowers in your house. You're going to stop when you see them. You're going to send somebody that you care about flowers. Yep. It doesn't matter where you live in the world. You're either going to stop by the grocery store and grab some and hand deliver them, or you're going to look online. There's a bazillion amazing growers that you can find locally, places you can send from that are actually more affordable than you think. When my friend Jody, I've talked about Jody a lot on the podcast. She is my best friend, if you're a new listener, my best friend from elementary school. And she recently moved back to Western Michigan, where we grew up, because her parents are getting older and she wanted to be closer to them and she wants to be there to help take care of them. And it was a big emotional move. You're 56 years old, you're single, you're moving from San Diego where you've lived for 6 years and you've had your big job, and now you're going back to live with your parents to the small town of Western Michigan. I mean, that's a lot. And so I knew that I was not able to be in Western Michigan, so I sent a surrogate. I sent her an orchid. And when she first got it, she reached out. And she was just like, you could tell in that, when somebody writes you a text and you're just like, they're kind of writing it like, oh, that when she first reached out, she's like, oh, Mel, this means so much. You're so sweet. Like, I just can't believe it. Well, it's now 6 weeks later. And just 2 days ago, she sent me another photo. This thing is still in full bloom. And she wrote to me just 2 days ago, I'm sitting here on this finally warm night as I look at this orchid. It is so lovely, and it reminds me of you. Isn't that awesome? It's my way to be there with her and support her. And, I was really trying to think about, okay, why do flowers boost your connection to someone else? Why is that? Because the truth is, I could have easily sent her a book. I could have sent her a gift certificate for a massage. Lord knows, when you move home to take care of your parents, you need one. But when you send those kind of gifts, they're great gifts, don't get me wrong. But let's just kind of unpack this, right? The thing about flowers is that they're alive. And they're beautiful. There's that energy and the awe factor. It's almost as if that living, breathing, beautiful, flowering orchid is a stand-in for you. It's true, isn't it? Think about it. You can't look at a bouquet that somebody sent you and not think first about the person who sent it to you. I challenge you. Try to look at a bouquet of flowers that somebody sent you for your graduation or your birthday or just because, and not think about them. I'll give you another example. Right now on my desk, There's a flower arrangement. No surprise there. But this one is from a company called United Talent Agents. These are the agents who I work with who represent the Mel Robbins podcast and our digital business. So I want to give a huge shout out to Oren and the team over at UTA. But they sent me this really beautiful arrangement. And the card that came with it is sitting on my desk. And the arrangement is in honor of this huge milestone that you and I have reached 100 million downloads on the Mel Robbins podcast. Like 100 million. I mean, the fact that 100 million times you put earbuds in and you hit play, or you jumped in your car and you turned this on, or you went for a walk and you took me with you 100 million times. You've invited me into your life. If I could send you flowers right now to show you how much I love you, how much I appreciate you for inviting me into your life the way that you have, I would send you one of those 3-foot huge globe arrangements like Dr. Judith sent me that requires 2 people to carry it up to your door. That's what I would do. And so I was reflecting on the phone with Oren, like, holy cow, dude, 100 million downloads? 18 months. That is no joke. And so the very next day, I'm sitting up here above the garage, working away on the podcast, there's a knock on the door and flowers arrive. And I opened up the card and it says, Mel, 100 million is no joke. You should be so proud. Here's to 100 million more. We love you, your UTA team. Now those flowers and the fact that they took a card and said what I said, those flowers aren't flowers. It's as if the whole team is sitting here with their arms around me as I'm just working away at my desk going, we are so proud of you, Mel. Keep going. Keep going. And the card, I'm one of those people that I keep a good card. I keep a good flower card. I know you do too. And can you believe there's even more research and science on this topic? Like, I don't need any more reasons to want to be cutting flowers and looking at flowers and sending flowers. But there's this research about the act of generosity. It is scientifically proven to make you happy when you do something generous for somebody else. I mean, how many more reasons do you need to get on the flower bandwagon with me? Whether you are being really generous with yourself, let's start with you. Start with you. Buy yourself those flowers. In fact, don't ever go grocery shopping ever again, if it's in your budget, without spending $5 on flowers for yourself. If you can grow flowers, and if you can't grow flowers, admire flowers. Go out of your way to give flowers to your friends. It will make you happy. It will make them happy. It's like a 2-for-1 happiness boost. And I want to give you another tip, okay, about the grocery store. Because, again, we're going to remember, walk past all the mixed bouquets. They're too expensive. I want you to go straight for the single variety that are wrapped up, right? The tulips, the peonies. Here's what I want you to do next. You're going to grab them, but then you're going to walk up to that counter at the grocery store, okay? And even if you are living in a city that has a lot of bodegas, so think about New York City, tons of listeners in New York City, tons of listeners in Toronto and London. You got those grocery stores that have flowers on the outside of the store, so you pick them up outside. Even there, you take them inside and just ask either the person working at the counter at the flower place where they sell the balloons in a grocery store, or take them inside to the couple that's running the bodega and just tell them, this is a gift. You don't have to say it's a gift for you. You know what they're going to do for free? They cut the stems, they cut the plastic off and take the price tag off, and they rewrap it in nice clear plastic or a nice clean piece of paper. They do it for free. It's like now a super nice gift, and it's for you or it's for somebody you love. And by the way, you want to know something super cool? You know the person that's working that counter at the grocery store? They're either bored out of their mind or they would be stocking vegetables. So when you walk up and say, hey, could you help me? Like, this is a gift. Would you? They're like, oh, everybody gets so excited. Yeah, I'd love to. And oftentimes, you know what they do? They literally cut it. They cut the stems. You see them start fluffing up the flowers and arranging them to make it look nice because they get to do something beautiful too. They get to be around the flowers too. They get to be part of the gift too. So you're not putting anyone else out. By asking somebody to wrap them for you, you're making someone else happier. So have I convinced you? Yet, really start loving and living with fresh flowers? I hope so. Have I convinced you to start giving them? Because it's not just petals and blooms and flowers that make you happier. Like, all this research is even bigger than flowers. Have you stopped to consider that the best place to make a change is by letting go of things, of projects, of thinking patterns, of relationships that no longer serve you? And the big question is how? How do you know when it's time? And I have got not only a fantastic visual metaphor to help you understand this concept, but I also have a really interesting way to approach this. We're going to talk about the fact that your energy and your intuition is always there to tell you when it's time to let something go because it no longer serves you. So to get into this topic, I want to introduce the metaphor. And it was the metaphor I had started talking about as we were on that hike together. I mean, here in the United States anyways, it is autumn. It is the fall season. We are all about pumpkins. We are in harvest time. There are corn stalks everywhere. We're getting ready for orange and red and all those amazing colors and carrot cake. I mean, I love this time of year. And I realize it may not be fall where you are. If you're, part of our global fan base halfway around the world, it's summertime. Don't get hung up on the fact that I'm using fall as a metaphor. I personally believe whenever it is that you are listening to this episode, even if it's 2 years from now, you're listening to this right now because you are meant to hear it right now. Because there is a new season that needs to start in your life. And that's going to require you to let go of things that no longer serve you. And so let's talk about the metaphor of what happens to a tree when the fall season hits. And in researching this for you, because, it's one thing to just kind of tell you a metaphor. It's another thing to really understand it and explain it. This was fascinating. I know we learned about chlorophyll and fall and the life cycle of a tree in elementary school, but I had forgotten most of this stuff. So check this out. The reason why a tree has leaves is because the tree needs energy to survive. It needs energy to grow. And the leaves have a very particular purpose. The leaves are there to take the sunlight and convert it to energy so that the tree can grow. And in exchange, the tree gives a ton of water back to these leaves. I mean, this process of the leaves sprouting and the leaves growing and the leaves taking its surface area and converting the sun into energy so the tree can go from a tiny little acorn to a mighty oak, that is a lot of energy. And there's this reciprocal nature to the relationship that a tree has to its leaves, because the tree has to bring in tons of water in order to fuel this energy exchange. And here's the reason why leaves fall off a tree. In the middle of winter, at least here in the United States, when the ground is frozen and snowpack is on top, there is no water for the tree. And if those leaves with their big flat surface were to stay on that tree through winter, the leaves would kill the tree. It would suck the tree dry of all the water that it needs. An interesting thing about fall is that, we look at the leaves turning, and we look at the leaves dropping gently and falling down to the ground as this beautiful thing that happens. this natural thing that happens. It's so lovely. It's just wonderful. Isn't this delightful? Do you want to know that this is almost like a violent act? That the trees are pushing those leaves off its branches. The tree is basically going, yo, if you are hanging around on my branches through the wintertime, you are going to suck me dry of all my energy. I am going to die if you don't get off my freaking branches. The tree literally pushes them, ejects them, kicks them out of their life. Why? Because there is no reciprocal energy exchange that can happen during the winter. The tree has to conserve its energy to survive. And after the winter season, once those leaves are gone and the tree can conserve its energy instead of giving it all to that leaf while killing itself. I bet you got areas of your life where you're giving all your energy into a relationship or into your work or into some stupid thinking pattern that you've been doing for years that makes you feel bad. You put all your energy in one direction. You get nothing in return. That's what fall is for a tree. The fall season for a tree is, thank you very much for spring and summer. You were amazing. This relationship between the leaf and the tree, this was reciprocal. You got energy from me. I got energy from you. Bada bing, bada boom. And then all of a sudden, boom. This is a one-way thing. And if I hold on to these leaves, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I'm bringing that metaphor and that visual and that documented point of view that this isn't just some lovely thing where the leaves, change colors and it's so beautiful and now we all drink a pumpkin spice latte. That's not what this is. This is a tree's survival. This is about energy. This is about the fact that in order to grow, in order to be strong, to be the best you got to surround yourself with relationships and work and projects and friendships and habits where there is an equal reciprocal exchange that you give and you get in return. And that's where we're going to start when it comes to how I want you to think about this concept of letting go. We're going to talk about how to identify that moment when there is no longer that energy exchange, that there is something that has become a complete energy suck. And when you realize, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship or a job or some habit or a place that you live, when you realize that something has become an energy suck on you, that's when you know it's time to let go. That's when you know, like that tree, that you better kick that thing off your branches because it's hanging on to you or you're holding on to it. And if you keep doing that, what will happen? And you've had this happen in your life where you've held on to things for too long, where you refuse to let things go. And what did it do? It sucked you dry. It sucked you dry of your energy. It sucked you dry of your vitality. It made you feel depleted. Instead of those leaves or that project or that person withering away and falling to the ground so that you could regain your strength, so that you could step into a new season of your life, no, you gave it all to them. You held on for too long. Well, guess what? That's not happening anymore. Because what we're going to talk about when we come back from a short word from our sponsors, which I want you to listen to, because by the way, our sponsors, they're the reason why I can show up twice a week. There is a reciprocal exchange between us. They literally pay for this show, which is why I'm so enthusiastic about it, so we can put this out there around the world for free. So I want to give an energy exchange back to the amazing sponsors of the Mel Robbins podcast. Take a listen. We're going to be right back, because we're going to now talk about, in detail, what do I mean by reciprocal energy exchange? And where are the major areas in your life where you tend to start to have this be a one-way thing, where you're given all the energy and you're the one that's depleted and dry? All right, I'll be right back. You hang on to my branches. We're not done yet. It's really green right now, which means these trees are holding on to it. Chlorophyll. That chlorophyll is coming through, but in literally a matter of days, the green is going to leave those leaves, yellow, orange, red, brown, purple. It's going to take over, And those leaves will have served their purpose, and they will all of a sudden wither away and fall to the ground. That was Mel Robbins, your friend who has a degree in botany. No, just kidding. I want to touch on one point from what I said on the trail before we get into this energy exchange and how you're going to use your intuition and the fact that you deserve to have an exchange, a reciprocal nature to what you give and what you receive back from it. I want to talk about one thing that I said, which is the leaves served their purpose. When the leaves are green, the leaves are bringing energy to the tree, and the tree is returning energy in the form of water. The reason why the leaves start to change is because the tree starts to pull back. The tree starts pulling back on the amount of water that it is sending to the leaves. The tree is starting to let go. The leaf no longer serves a purpose. And this is an important thing to say because so often we have trouble letting go of friendships, of habits, of jobs, for me, where I lived and raised our kids for 26 years. We recently sold our home, and by God, I held on to that for probably 2 years longer than we needed to because I had trouble letting go. But what I want you to focus on is that when something has a purpose in your life, that's an amazing thing. And it's also normal for something to serve a purpose during a specific period of time and to no longer serve a purpose in your life now or in the life you want to create. And so when you honor that a friendship served a purpose, and a really good example of this is, you know how whenever you have a new job or you move an apartment or you move to a city, that all of a sudden the patterns in your life change and your friendships change. And your friendships change because now you're doing different things. So you're bumping into different people. It doesn't mean that you're no longer friends with the people that you used to hang out with at work. But the friends that you had at work served a particular important purpose during that period of your life. There was an equal exchange back and forth. What you gave, you received back. It's why you ate lunch with the same people every day. You enjoyed them and they enjoyed you. But now that you live somewhere else, putting a ton of energy back into that relationship when you're not going to get the same back, it doesn't serve the same purpose. And that's why when you let go of friendships, you also need to let go of the judgment on yourself, like there's something wrong with me, and am I doing something wrong, and do I have any friends? Of course you have friends. The patterns of your life have changed. You're putting energy somewhere else because you're getting energy from somewhere else. This is the natural cycle of life. It's the natural cycle of relationships. And I find that when you really honor the things that you need to let go of, whether it's a job you no longer like, or a house you no longer want to live in, or a friendship you don't see very often, or maybe it's some habit. Maybe it's some habit that you used to have. So when you say something serves a purpose, you actually honor. You honor the energy it used to give you. You honor the fact that you put something into it. And you also honor the fact that not everything is going to be in your life forever. And that's what allows you to let go. You start to let go when you realize that holding on to things is holding you back. And in particular, holding on to the guilt and the judgment that you layer onto yourself that you should, but I feel guilty, but this, but that is definitely holding you back from creating a new life and from creating space for something new to happen. And see, that's one of the reasons why you have to learn how to let go. Because when you continue to pour your energy into things that no longer give you energy back, it's going to kill you. It's going to kill your happiness. It's going to kill your vitality. It destroys your motivation. It makes you feel depleted. It makes you feel like you're the last on your list. And so that's reason number one. And the second reason why you have to start to let go of what doesn't serve you is because as long as you are holding on to the old stuff, you have no time, no space, and no motivation to create anything new. Period. And you know this. So let's now jump into how. How do I use this energy exchange and my intuition to spot the things that are draining me dry and to let them go, push them off the branches, get them out of my life, thank them for their purpose and their service, but then get out of here because you need to make room for something new and better and energizing. Doesn't that sound good? Yeah, you better believe it sounds good. So let's do it. And one of the reasons why I want you to really focus on energy is because your energy doesn't lie. I mean, just for a second with me, just take a second. Whether you're out there walking the dog, or you're driving around in your car, or you're working from home, or you're busy doing a bunch of stuff, I want you to just stop for a second. And I want you to assess right now, what's your energy level? Think about a fuel gauge in a car. Empty to full. Empty in a human being means you feel depleted, you feel burnt out, you feel checked out, you feel like your whole life is basically pouring energy into everything else. Full in a human being basically means that you're energized, you're excited. You feel like the things that you're pouring yourself into, your habits, your routine, the people you're surrounded with, the projects you're working on, it may be difficult, but it's bringing energy back into your life too. Your energy never lies. We are energetic human beings. And I know that sounds woo-woo. We can get into the neuroscience on that on a totally different episode, but let me prove it to you. Have you ever walked into, say, a coffee shop and the person that is behind the counter is having the world's worst day? They are super grumpy. It doesn't matter how big your smile is. It doesn't matter how nice you are. They are like, that energy actually impacts you, just like your positive energy can impact somebody else. Energy is contagious. And most importantly, when you hang out with your friend Mel Robbins, I'm going to teach you to start to pay attention to it. And I'm going to teach you to trust it because energy is also tied to intuition. And we're going to get into this tool of how do you assess, is something giving me positive energy? Is something giving me negative energy? Is this a relationship that is one way, or is this something that gives me something in return? That is the tool we're going to talk about today. And what if the very next morning you walk into the coffee shop and you're having a bad day? Like one of your pets is really sick and it just is really bumming you out and you're feeling really low. And the person behind the counter is just the nicest person on the planet. And they look you in the eyes and they give you a big smile and they are really cheery and they compliment you. And they maybe even ask you, hey, how you doing? You're like, I'm not doing so great. Oh, I'm really sorry. Coffee's on me. How do you feel? You feel better because they poured their positive energy into you and that lifted you up. Energy is contagious. It also always tells the truth. It's like a compass. In fact, a compass runs on magnetic energy. That's why a compass always points true north. It never lies. Your energy doesn't lie either. It's why you feel kind of off around certain people. It's why if somebody texts you and you don't like them, you're like, ugh. But if you like the person, you're like, oh yeah, cool. Energy never lies. So let's talk about how we're going to use it, okay? So I'm going to break the topic of letting go into two different types of situations. And in each one, I'm going to explain how to use energy and paying attention to the energy inside you, both that you're giving, that you're feeling, and that you're receiving back in order to know when it's time to let go. So situation number one is super easy. And this is typically when it has to do with things or projects or a job, or somebody who's like really, really engaging in toxic behavior, okay? This is the easy stuff. This is when you have a flood of negativity around something. And I'm going to give you a bunch of examples of this, okay? So we all have a pair of pants that we're holding on to from high school or before we were pregnant or whenever that we can't freaking fit into. When you stare at those things, you're reminded that you can't fit in them. When you try to wiggle them on, especially after a shower, you feel terrible about yourself. That is something that is an example. You need to let go of that. That job that you walk into where there is a pit in your stomach and you gripe about it to your friends and you spend all this energy pouring into why you hate it and resist it, you need to find another job. That friend that does nothing but gossip and roll their eyes and drag you down and literally is such a bad influence on you, you need to let them go. And what does that mean? Well, that depends on you. Donate the pants for sure. Start redirecting your energy from complaining about your job to directing energy to looking for a new one. I mean, just imagine. That's the other thing about this. Do you know how much energy and time and effort you waste focusing on resistance and complaining? If you were to just stop complaining for a day about something that gives you negative energy, like your job or your parents or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your roommates, what if you stopped complaining? Because that's negative energy pouring out, and you directed that same effort towards something positive, like fixing it or letting it go and creating something new that makes you feel good. Like, I relate to that because I think I've spent a lot of my life pouring negative energy at things that I didn't really like instead of realizing I needed to complete this. I needed to let this go. The roommate served a purpose 2 years ago. Not a fit right now, and that's okay. Time to kick the leaves off the branches. You know what I'm saying? Time to save myself instead of pouring everything into either another person or my energy into being upset and frustrated and disappointed. So when you have things that are for sure 100% zapping your energy, or you find yourself complaining, griping, resisting, let go. And you can do that in two ways. Obviously, donate, throw out, delete is one. The other one is take all that negative resistance that you feel in you that churns and pour it into something positive. If you can't quit your job, for example, because you need to pay the bills, no problem. Instead of complaining, instead of feeling resistance, spend 30 minutes every morning before you go to work looking for a new one. Or spend 30 minutes every morning pouring positive energy into a hobby or a project or a side hustle that brings you positive energy. And when you start to do that, you start to lift yourself up because you are now getting this reciprocal exchange by pouring energy and attention into something new and something positive. And that's going to lift you up. And by the way, that will also change your experience of that current job that you hate. I know this because I've done it. I remember being right out of, let's see, how old was I? I was 30 years old. I was pregnant with our daughter, who's now 23. And we had moved to Boston from New York City, where I had been a public defender. And I loved that job working for legal aid. And so we moved to Boston. I do not have a license to practice in Massachusetts, so I could not work for the public defender's office. I have to take the bar, but I've got bills to pay. So I get a job in this huge law firm. And working in a law firm is the exact opposite of being a public defender. When I worked in New York City for legal aid, I was in court 5 days a week from 8 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. That was my job. I was on my feet. I was, negotiating plea deals. I was talking to witnesses and police officers and judges and like that, going to clients, going to Rikers, all of it. When you get a job in a large law firm, you literally go into a high rise and sit in an office and write all day. It was the exact opposite of what I am wired to do. I knew the moment I got that job that I was going to hate it. And for a year, I would get on the commuter rail and I would commute in for 45 minutes and then I would get off the commuter rail and I would clomp over to the building and then I would get in the elevator and then I would take the elevator up to like whatever, the 23rd floor, and then I'd clomp. I'd go into my office and shut the door. And From the moment I woke up every morning, I felt depleted. The closer I got to that office as that train clunk, 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 clunk down the tracks towards Boston, the more resistance I felt. I got nothing in return from that job. Yes, I got a paycheck and I needed it, so it served a purpose, but I was getting nothing of value back. Because when I looked at the partners in the law firm, I knew damn well that's not the life I wanted. I knew that this was not a fit for me. But I'll tell you, I made the mistake that everybody makes. Instead of recognizing that that's how I felt, instead of channeling all of that angst and resistance and into looking for something else, I sat there miserable and I felt depleted and I felt awful. And I'm going to confess this to you. I didn't even take the advice then. You know what happened to me? I got pregnant and I had a baby and I went on maternity leave. And when I was on maternity leave, that's when, with distance from it, I was like, okay, there is no way I'm going back there. No way. Now that I have escaped, there is no way I'm going back. And we've all had exes like that, right? Where you're like in it for so long, you finally let it go and break off. And they're like, what the hell was I thinking? Now that I'm on the other side and I'm away from that like energy suck, I don't want to go back to the like energy sucker vampire thing. What the hell? But when you're in it, that negativity vortex can keep you spinning and stuck. You convince yourself, but I need the money, but I can't do this, but I don't have it. And then you're so depleted from your complaining and the outpouring of energy and the wrong thing that you're just stuck. That was me. So I get pregnant. I go on maternity leave. Holy cow, I am free from the vortex of negativity. I've been let go, but now I got to go back. And so my husband, Chris, says to me, look, I know you don't want to go back, but here's the problem, Mel. We have a mortgage and we have a baby. And you will go crazy being home. And so here's the thing. You need to find a job. Your maternity leave ends in exactly 3 months. So that means you have 12 weeks to find a job. And you have to make $60,000 a year. That's it. And you know what's interesting? If you give a human being a problem to solve, we get pretty creative. And I'll tell you what, the night before my maternity leave, I not only landed a job, it wasn't for 60 grand, it was for 55, but that was enough. And I walked in the next day and I let go. What do you say? I guess I quit, but you know, they didn't let me go. I quit. But so what I'm trying to say is do not make the mistake that 30-year-old Mel Robbins made. Do not do that to yourself. Do not waste a year of your life spinning in that negativity energy vortex. Your body knows. Your spirit knows. Get rid of those pants. Push that project to the side that you don't feel inspired to work on anymore. Let it go because it is sucking your vitality dry. And that brings me to our very first question about happiness from a listener named Andrea.
Hey Mel, it's Andrea. Can you talk about happiness? I can't think of a time that I have felt true happiness. I'm just living, I guess. I feel that something is missing, and I believe it's happiness.
Andrea, I love the way you framed that question. And for you listening, I'm going to put that question right back to you. Can you think of a time that you felt true happiness? Or are you like most people, that you feel like something is missing from your life and you can't quite put your finger on it? You know, when I hear Andrea's question, I can totally relate to it because I know I felt the way that she's feeling. And one of the mistakes that I was making when I felt like something was missing is I, of course, went on the search. I got to find happiness. And here's the first piece of research that I want to talk about. Research says that happiness, or that feeling that we're seeking of happiness, it's often fleeting because we are searching for happiness in the wrong places. In fact, researchers at Rutgers and the University of Toronto found that people who pursue happiness, you're chasing it, you're looking for it outside yourself, you often feel like you don't have enough time in the day. And this paradoxically makes you feel unhappy. Because when you feel like you don't have enough time in the day because you're constantly chasing all these things outside of you, you start to feel like you're not in control of your life. And I think that's what Andrea is talking about. that we're all chasing down some version of happiness that we think we're supposed to be chasing, right? That society has marketed some version of life to us. And that's why you probably are familiar with that phrase, I'll be happy when. We all succumb to that thinking. I'll be happy when I lose the weight, I fall in love, I land that dream job, I pay off my bills, I get into my dream school, I find the perfect apartment. And there's multiple problems with thinking like this. First of all, if you think that you'll be happier when you achieve something, what always happens is when you achieve it, you're not as happy as you thought you would be. And then all of a sudden, because you don't have this big goal in front of you anymore, your happiness plummets. And so the research is very, very clear that these big events that we're chasing, that we think are going to give us a boost of happiness, that happiness doesn't last. And there's a second reason why this kind of thinking, that you'll be happy at some point in the future, why this is really problematic. It's because you are anchoring your happiness on something that hasn't happened yet. That means your happiness is something you have to earn. Your happiness is something that's outside of you. And that's not what happiness is at all. Happiness is always within your control. Happiness is something that you want to cultivate in your life where you are right now. And the good news is you don't have to wait to be happy when. You can learn to be happier now. So let me explain, based on the research, how happiness works when it comes to you individually. So there's this formula that's supported by the science that says you have 100% capacity for happiness. That's what you got. Your cup can be full and runneth over. 100%, baby. Happiness is for you. 50% of that capacity is genetics. That's your default. So you might be somebody that has 50% genetics that are preset to being very sunny and kind of bubbly and happy. Or 50% of your genetics might be like, meh, you're kind of grumpy. That's okay, because you still have the other 50% to play with. 10% of the rest is based on the circumstances that you're facing right now. And 40% of happiness, period, in your life right now is completely under your control. And that's what we're going to focus on, because that's awesome. No matter what kind of family you were born into, no matter what you're facing right now in your life, 40% of your capacity for happiness right now completely in your control. And so before we go forward, I want to make sure that as we're talking, that we're in complete agreement about what the word happiness means. Because when you and I use the word happy or happiness, we might be saying totally different things. There's a huge spectrum when people use this word. Researchers even talk about the fact that happiness is all over the map. Some people, when they say happiness, they mean laughing and having a good time. Other people mean fulfillment or thriving or kicking ass in life. And so you and I are going to have a conversation right now about what you mean when you say happiness. Where are you on the spectrum between laughter and having a great time to feeling completely fulfilled and thriving in life? And so in order for you and I to get on the same page, I'm going to bring a metaphor in. You know Mel Robbins. She loves her metaphors. She loves her visual explanations for these big, heady concepts. And thankfully, I got a great one for happiness. So whenever you hear the word happiness, I want you to think about an ocean. There are waves in an ocean, and that's one spectrum of happiness. And waves come and they go. And having fun in the waves requires you to jump in the waves, to get into the ocean, to decide that you're going to go have fun. But then if you think about the ocean, there are days that there's no waves at all. It's perfectly still. And the ocean itself and your ability to stand in that ocean, to float and to swim, that's a deeper form of happiness. Or what about the days where the ocean is stormy and you wouldn't dare go in? But on those days that you're on the beach, aren't you so present to the wind, to the salt, to the waves crashing on the beach? That's what I want you to think about that huge range of how an ocean shows up. And I love this metaphor of an ocean for happiness, the waves being fun and the still ocean being your ability to just experience happiness and you being present even on the stormiest days to the little details. I love this range because it ties right back to all of the research, but it gives us a visual. So this is a question from a listener that I think will help us dig deeper into like the connection between you and people around you and how they impact your happiness.
I'm listening to your podcast now and almost crying. What if your happiness seems centered entirely on that of another? In my case, it's my son. I've heard you're only as happy as your happiest child, and I have one son, and he is not happy. I know he lives with his face in his phone, and he says he doesn't mind being a loner. I know that he was happiest many years ago when he had a girlfriend who adored him and was very active. Now he's 26 and should be in the prime of his life, and he isn't. And as a result, I feel deeply unhappy. How do I move past this, and how can I help him do the same? At 65 and 4 years out from breast cancer treatment, I think it's time to find my warm people and find that happiness again.
I hear that. I mean, I have 2 kids of my own, and so much of my happiness is built upon them and because of them. And, any frustration that I feel is usually because I'm not with them, right? Or when they're hurting, I so wish it was me. So I think that that's unavoidable. I think that love necessitates amounts of pain that we have to buy into. So I think that the fact that there's pain associated with that love should not be the surprising part. I think what I would, if this was me saying that, and I feel like that's been me saying that sometimes in my life, we got to hear only a little bit of her story, right? Her story was her son's story mostly, right? Then we heard that she went through breast cancer. Like, I would have loved to hear her story, and yet we're hearing her story as a bit character or as a side narrator of her son's story, which means that our happiness becomes very fragile. So you and I both, well, in financial groups, they always tell you diversify your portfolio, right? Don't all be in all stocks, and don't be in all bonds, and that's my knowledge cliff, right? Don't be on all one thing, right? I think the same thing happens with meaning. And I think we see it with people who love their kids. We also see it with workaholics, where they love something and it's meaningful. The work is meaningful and pleasurable, and they're good at it, right? So then they just do more of it. But the more they do that and they don't do other things, they're slowly taking out other meaningful parts of their life, so that their entire meaning portfolio is all in one stock. It's all that son, or it all becomes that work. We don't even know what to do with ourselves when we don't have work to do, right? That's the workaholic, right? Like, they get free time and they're like, what do I do? Maybe I'll just do a few more emails, then I'll feel happy again, right?
Well, that used to be you. I remember when we first met, you had been, you had kind of fallen into that trap, and you had to make yourself a promise that whenever you were on a plane, you were going to put your laptop away and you were going to force yourself to watch a movie, because you were starting to see that you loved work so much, and this was me too, that you hadn't diversified where you got your happiness from. And so I think that's incredible advice. And I also keep thinking about that swinging. So I loved it when you were saying earlier to think about your life and the emotional and the meaning aspect of life as this range. And if you never knew the depths of sadness, you wouldn't ever experience the greatest heights of joy. And that there is always this swing. And when it swings in a direction where you have really uncomfortable feelings, that is a mentally healthy and a mentally emotional place to be in life at times. And one of the greatest things that I've learned recently, Sean, and it's helped me a lot as a parent, is that it is so important that the people in your life struggle at times, because inside that struggle is where they learn the lessons, and they have to dig deeper and discover something inside themselves. And, it's the hardest thing in the world to see somebody that you love suffering. And I had that experience watching my husband struggle with depression, and I could throw every book on the planet at him, every podcast episode at him, but I can't do the work for him. I can just hold space for that. And I think we have to do that for ourselves, that on those days that you feel like shit, you've got to hold space for the fact that you've just swung in the direction of a healthy feeling, and eventually it's going to swing back. And what I like about what you're teaching us, Sean, is that through these habits, and you said a gratitude practice, a journaling practice, exercising every day, taking 2 minutes to write a note to somebody, these are simple things that leverage all this research. This is the neck down approach as far as I'm concerned, something that has nothing to do with how you feel, but impacts how you feel. That these are things that anybody can do. What happens from a mood benefit when you walk, and why does that happen?
Yeah, so I've a chapter in the book, I think, called "A Balm for Body and Brain." And one of the things that we know with an absolute high degree of certainty, as well as we know anything in science, is that walking boosts mood, and it does so in an enduring kind of way. So you can demonstrate this in all sorts of ways, but the simplest thing, simplest way of doing it to show the short-term boost to mood is by bringing people to the laboratory. And there's lots of studies have variations on this kind of study where you're ostensibly they're there to judge the beauty of the buildings that might be on a college campus or in a city center or something like that. And you have two simple conditions. One is they look at pictures on screens or pictures that have been printed out for them, or the other is they go for a walk and look at these buildings and they give ratings for each of these buildings. And before and after, you just get people to fill in a bunch of innocuous questionnaires, including one rating how they're feeling. And what you find consistently is that bringing people out for a short walk, a 10, 12, 15-minute walk, gives a short-term boost to how well they feel, even if they're people who hate walking. And there are such people. I find them somewhat mysterious myself, but there are people who dislike walking, but they still get a benefit from walking. And there are lots of other variations on these kinds of studies. There's some wonderful studies that have been conducted in Canada, where lots of towns have tunnels because of the severe winter conditions. Mm-hmm. And getting people to walk outside in so that they have a view of nature as opposed to walking in a tunnel, that gives a boost to how well you feel over and above the boost that you get from just going for a walk. So walking in nature is a very, very good thing for you. So those are kind of short-term boosts, but you can look at much better quality studies in terms of tracking people over time. Mm-hmm. And looking at the amount of movement that they engage in, and then asking the question, what is the likelihood that they're going to have depression or suffer from anxiety disorders or these kinds of conditions? And what you see, so I discuss in particular a very large-scale Australian study, is that people who are not moving or who move the least in the population are the ones who are most likely to succumb to major depressive disorder. So this is a tracking through time study. They're not depressed at the time that you're starting the study. You're tracking them over 7 or 8 years, and you're asking the question, how likely is it that they are going to have major depressive disorder? And the likelihood falls the more you move. Now, obviously, that tops out because at some point, there are no more benefits. But the key point here is that if we design societies where people minimize their own physical activity, we're also designing societies where people are going to be prone to these, really unpleasant psychiatric disorders that can take, in some cases, years of therapy and work to remit. Whereas if we had designed our society in the first place so that people were moving more, this problem would not arise.
So if I go for a 10-minute walk, why does that boost my mood?
So there are lots of potential reasons. We don't know the deep reason is the honest truth. But what we can say is that depending on where you're walking, and this is also an important thing, if you're walking in nature, things like your stress hormones start to fall. You can engage in creative thinking, which you might not have been able to engage in if you're just sitting at home ruminating over something unpleasant. You can escape yourself for a while, which is also, I think, a good thing to be able to do. Sometimes we get annoyed at being in our own heads, and not being in our own heads, being mindless is, to my mind, actually a great benefit, so that you're not excessively focused on yourself. And walking in nature brings with it a particular benefit that I think people, again, kind of underestimate. When you're walking in a nice suburban environment where there's lots of trees, like where, for example, I'm lucky enough to live, that's actually an inherently interesting and pleasant experience, because humans enjoy a connection to nature. You get the benefit of your stress hormones, as I've said, falling. You get this chance to engage in creative ideation that you wouldn't otherwise be able to engage in. So those kinds of things happen pretty quickly, and they happen because we have bodies that are designed and brains that are designed to allow us to engage in movement. Now, I did say at the start, the environment matters. If you imagine walking along the edge of a freeway, or a motorway, as we would call it, where cars are whizzing past at unpredictable speeds of 70 miles an hour, or whatever it happens to be, and you've also got loud noises, and you've just got concrete around you, that will be a very stressful and unpleasant experience. And we've got lots and lots of data which I don't discuss in this book, but which from a variety of sources, showing that people who are trapped in those kinds of urban environments are much more prone to psychiatric disorder than people who can escape from those. So this is why building accessible city parks, for example, is in my mind an unalloyed good. It's something that we should be doing.
So I agree with you. And I would still love to know, like, let's just say it's ideal settings. It's a beautiful day. We're going for a walk in a beautiful city park, or in a suburban neighborhood, or out on some trail. The birds are chirping, the sun is shining, and you're going to go for a walk for like just 10 minutes. You're going to take a brisk walk.
Yeah.
You said stress hormone. Does that mean that the cortisol drops? Does dopamine kick in? Like, what is happening in your body?
And this is what I say to you. We have to be careful about what we can state with certainty. So
yeah,
just about every study that says dopamine, they don't measure dopamine, because it's not possible to measure dopamine. We're not allowed, for good reason, to drill holes in people's heads and sample what level of dopamine is present. We can measure cortisol much more easily, because you can take blood samples, we can take samples from saliva, and there are other ways of getting at it. So again, what we have are correlations. We can't do the kinds of studies that you might like to do that would be causal, but I think that the correlation is itself good enough. When you expose people to nature, and when people are walking under their own steam or moving under their own steam through nature, people report changes in well-being that are very positive, as opposed to, for example, when just being sedentary. So when you compare them to sedentary controls, and similarly, when you ask people to do slightly unpleasant things, like I said, to walk along the edge of a very busy road where there's the noises and all of those things are unpredictable, and the environment is a little bit threatening. So it's a constellation of several things coming together at once. It's not just one thing.
That's pretty cool. What are those things? Because I guess what I'm trying to understand is this. I think it's common sense. We've all had the experience where we've gone for a walk and you immediately feel better. And going for a walk outside can solve like 90% of the problems that you have. It boosts your mood. It makes you feel a little bit more energized. I notice that it clears my head, but I don't know why. And I think when people understand the why, in terms of, even if it's just a correlation, they might become more motivated to get their ass off the couch and take that walk and make it part of their lives. And so that's just what I'm curious about, because I've felt all those things, but I've always wondered, well, what's actually happening that my mood gets boosted? And what I just heard you say is that, first of all, it's a correlation. They're not drilling holes in our heads and saying, oh, the dopamine spiked. But there's a clustering effect of being outside, of moving your body, of having your brain stimulated in a certain way that has a chemical benefit.
And experiencing movement. You've got optic flow, you've got lots of other things going on.
What is optic flow?
So this is the sensation of things moving on either side of you as you move. Imagine walking down a corridor. You can feel the walls receding behind you. So you get lots of activity occurring that wouldn't be there when you're sedentary. And I guess the key point.
Why does that matter? What does
because again,
optic flow do?
If I keep coming back to this key point, our bodies are built for movement. So when you're moving, you're being prepared for action. Lots of brain systems and body systems are ready to do things. They're not if you're just sitting down. So optic flow in and of itself is neither here nor there, but it generates the sensation of movement. It prepares the body. You're actually moving, but you can do optic flow studies where you can simulate movement quite easily, and people hate that because you get this dizzy kind of feeling. You get this when you're on an escalator, for example, when you go to walk on an escalator that isn't moving. You've had that sway, I'm sure.
It's very destabilizing.
It's very destabilizing. But the key point that I keep coming back to is that movement itself is the good thing for you, because it entrains simultaneously lots of activity at lots of different levels of your body, from a variety of different changes in the brain all the way down to the contact that your feet make with a substrate. And why does that feel good? Well, we can hand wave about this, but I think the simplest answer is this. Those of us in our ancestral past who didn't move got eaten, and those of us who enjoyed moving and actually got around and didn't hang around didn't get eaten. And evolution has given us these kind of positive feelings that come as an end consequence of doing things that are good for us, and it rewards us by making us feel good. Can I prove that? I think in evolutionary terms, it has to be true. You see in populations that don't move, they're subject to predation, they're subject to all sorts of things. But humans, again, uniquely, started this march and we've profited from it. So you have this kind of positive feedback thing going on all the time, that we're kind of restless, and we kind of enjoy that restlessness when we test it by actually getting out there and moving.
Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you, so make sure you subscribe. Mwah.